Hello, everybody. This is Jack. I'm your host here at Paranormal Planet. Welcome back to a special edition of Paranormal Planet. We'll be talking about Bigfoot, Sasquatch, Dogman, and the like. And uh, this is the time of year that I like to cover this particular part of the mystery. And this is the part of the mystery that involves missing people more than anything else. You'll have to forgive me. I've been on a bit of a hiatus with Paranormal Planet. There's just been too much going on for me to produce it each week. However, things have gotten back to normal now. So here we are, and we'll be talking about some of the more interesting points in the mystery. And I'll be talking about some of the points that I lay out in my book, Bigfoot Unleashed. We'll be talking about eliminating the impossible where the mystery is concerned. We'll be talking about why DNA won't do, the ET connection, tree structures, but most importantly, we'll be talking about Bigfoot and missing people. And it's this time of year that people all go out and they do a lot of berry picking, wild mushroom picking, things like that. And most of you will be familiar with the missing 411 cases of missing people in the national park system, as well as other, wilderness areas. And the two kind of meet in the middle where the Bigfoot enigma is concerned. And I talk about that in my book, Bigfoot Unleashed, but I wanted to play something for you guys that I thought was fun. Now, this video sequence I've included in another episode at some point, and it's funny because I had at least, 10 people probably comment that it had been proven to be fake. It has not at all. And some people claim, oh, well, that couldn't be a Bigfoot. And I asked them, how would they possibly know that unless they've heard, a dozen different Bigfoot scream? How would you know whether or not that's a Bigfoot? So I'm going to share this. We're going to take a look at it because it's pertinent to tonight's conversation, dealing with the idea that it's spring. This is the time of year when people go out and they start doing all kinds of wild harvesting. And according to David Paulides, the expert on the missing 411 cases, there is a cluster of missing people having to do with wild berry picking. And these areas where the wild berry picking took place and the missing person cases took place are areas where there have been a lot of Bigfoot activity and sightings, historically speaking. So when you put all of that together, it's not hard to come to some sort of idea that these creatures are seeing that as some sort of competition for their food source. But take a look at this following video. Hang on just a minute for me.
Coming from nearby. It's a long, drawn-out howl. It lasts about 9 seconds and certainly sounds like an animal of some kind. The mushroom hunter pans his camera back and forth to see if he can spot anything, but sees nothing.
think it's time to go.
So this I would characterize as a yell or a scream, which does fit into the paradigm of the Bigfoot world. This particular vocalization has a definitive sound of aggressiveness. I would say whatever is making the sound is trying to scare this person out of its area.
May 2015, a local.
All right. So, hi, Chrissy. It's good to see you. Join our live chat if you haven't, guys. There's a lot of very intelligent researchers that join us here. And often there is a great conversation that takes place on our live chat. So that reminded me, because Ken Gerhardt was on that sequence, that I will be speaking at the Talahena, Oklahoma Bigfoot Conference on May the 21st of this year. It'll have everybody from Ken Gerhardt to Robert Kreider, to a number of really, really well-known researchers out there. And I think it'll probably be the best Bigfoot conference of the entire year, just judging by the speakers that'll be there. So you'll have to come by and check that out. So that sequence that you just saw is a perfect example of what I think is happening in the berry cluster of missing people in the missing 411 cases. These are people that are out picking wild berries. They're doing it in Bigfoot hotspots. And when they are out there and they're picking berries in these Bigfoot hotspots, the Bigfoot know the time of year when certain berries are in bloom. And it's an important part of their food source. So it's not hard to see where the competition problem comes into play there. Now, key to all of this is the fact that David Paulides published what I believe to be the seminal case in all of the missing 411 cases. It holds a clue that none of the other cases have, and there are 1,600 of them. There's 1,600 cases that all fit the profile. And tonight, because I'm convinced, I do this every year, I'm convinced that so many people are unaware of the danger that is out in the woods. Well, I'm going to show a certain sequence out of my film, Bigfoot and the Missing, dealing with an analysis done by a man named Thinker Thunker. I'm also going to play some audio sequences in my film, and these audio sequences are actual speech taking place between two of these creatures. And I think when you combine the two, which is what I tried to do in my film, it really brings it home in a way that nothing else does, because you're getting to see what I believe to be a completely undeniable video sequence of the existence of these creatures taken by a national park camera. And on top of that, you have audio recorded by a gentleman named Ron Moorhead, who the audio has been analyzed by a top naval crypto analyst, a guy that's trained to actually listen to and try to break down audio. And he claims that not only is this speech, but an actual language taking place in these sequences, but that the creatures appear to be able to speak in 5 separate octaves. Now that's amazing For those of you who have read my book, Paranormal Planet, I make the supposition, the theory, that any and all bipedal cryptid animals have to do or actually have a extraterrestrial origin in nature. And the reason why I state that is largely based on the work of a geneticist who has analyzed both Bigfoot and Dogman DNA. It looked as though that DNA had been fused together in such a way that only an extraterrestrial intelligence would have been able to do so. So without further ado here, I'm going to play a sequence from my film. And hopefully you guys, hang on. Okay. Now, the very first two screams that you're going to hear were recorded live at the time that I state in my film. After that, you will come to the point where you begin to hear the language of the creatures, and then of the analysis of Thinker Thunker. It's at that stage that I will pick back up on the conversation here. So hang on just a moment, guys. All right, guys. So, yeah, when you listen to that, and there's no denying that that was communication. There we go. There's no denying that that was a language communication taking place, and uh, that is a physical creature in our reality. So, and that's something that, you know, is of huge debate in the Bigfoot community. And let's face it, ever since the hitchhiker effect came along, and we might as well talk about that for a moment because of its relationship to Dogman, we have to ask ourselves where the line is. So, do we accept the fact that the Dogman sighting, which occurred in the hitchhiker effect to the family members of the highest ranking intelligence official dealing with Skinwalker Ranch and the OSAP program, is that indicative of the entire mystery? Or are we looking at something else? Are we looking at something which has the ability to mimic other mysteries? And if so, why would it choose to do so? All very good questions. If not, and it's indicative of the mystery overall, then we have a major problem as far as cryptozoology is concerned. And that problem is the chicken and the egg. So if the phenomenon is responsible for dogmen, and you can take dogmen and put them side by side with Sasquatch in a column, and they match up almost perfectly. And by that, I mean you have an indigenous oral history about the creatures. You have a ever increasing body of highly credible witnesses. And you have physical evidence being left at the scene in both Dogman cases and Sasquatch / Bigfoot cases. Just for the record, I prefer the word Sasquatch over Bigfoot. I think it is more in keeping with what these creatures actually are. In my mind, you can think more Heidelbergensis and less Gigantopithecus blacki. I think you're looking at something that is far, far more intelligent, humanesque like than has ever been presupposed. Now, to tell an interesting story, I was with my mentor, J.C. Johnson, and we were way up in the Chusca Mountains with guides on horseback. And he came across a 1/4 mile long track line. I mean, this thing was a long, hundreds of yards, of 19-inch footprints dug deep into this hard pan soil. So this thing, you know, our guide said had to weigh over 1,000 pounds. 19-inch prints. You can imagine how big that is. Shaquille O'Neal has 16-inch prints, you know. So you can just imagine how big that is. So the Chusca Mountains are actually in northern New Mexico. And we were on Navajo Indian reservation land. And we're following this track line. And all of a sudden, in the middle of a field where the topography didn't change at all, the tracks just stop midfield. Like the thing just vanished into thin air, right? And JC looks down at the tracks and starts shaking his head in disbelief. And I look up to the sky and I start shaking my head in disbelief, because I had a very strong notion that whatever happened to this creature happened from something that had come from the sky. Now, the stride is what was interesting. So this thing had a 6-foot stride, and halfway through this field, almost instantly, that 6-foot stride turned into a 10-foot stride. And the heels, the toes were dug deep. This thing got spooked. And I was sitting there shaking my head going, you're talking about a creature with 19-inch prints, weighs over 1,000 pounds. It's in its absolute, perfect habitat here in the middle of nowhere, as far away from man as you can get. What's going to spook an animal like that? Because something scared it, and that's why it took off running. And whatever scared it, took it. That's why the prints just stopped. And it occurred to me, are we looking at the abduction of these creatures by an ET intelligence? And I talk about that in my book, Bigfoot Unleashed, the ET connection to these creatures. And we know now that there is an undeniable ET connection to Dogman. Where is the line? Where do we find the line now as cryptozoologists and say, these creatures have an ET connection, but none of the other cryptozoological creatures have one? You see what I'm getting at? It's a major problem, and it's one that many cryptozoologists just simply are not talking about. Why that is, I don't know, but we have to figure out where that line is. And when it comes to cryptozoology, there are 3 circles of cryptozoology. And the first circle has to do with what largely are referred to as Lazarus species. Now, there are some cryptozoologists out there that'll hold your feet to the flame and say a Lazarus species has this very, very little tiny specific definition to it. I'm not one of those cryptozoologists. In my mind, a Lazarus species is any species that should have gone extinct, was extinct, or is thought to have gone extinct, which is still surviving in our day and age. The prime example that everybody talks about is the coelacanth. There are others. I believe that the Tasmanian tiger, the thylacine, is one of these creatures. I believe the thylacine is still alive and breeding in the wilds, and that there's evidence for it. And that has nothing to do with the center circle of cryptozoology, which is the so-called woo animals, which are Dogman and Bigfoot and any other bipedal cryptid animal that you can think of. And here's the logic behind this, guys. So there is no biological mechanism by which we are aware as humans that there should evolve a bipedal canine-headed creature. It just shouldn't happen. There's absolutely no advantage for a canine to evolve to have to carry weight upright the way that these creatures are seen doing, right? So where is that line? Because when you look at the Bigfoot mystery, we can trace it all the way back to ancient Samaria and the Sumerian tablets, 500,000 tablets found at the Palace of Ashurbanipal, detailed every single little facet of Sumerian life. And in that story is the story of a creature named Enkidu. And Enkidu is a spot-on match for Bigfoot, even covered in long red hair, a wild man, with superhuman strength and abilities. And he was described as being 1/3 human and 2/3 deity. That's how special this creature was. And I also talk about that in my book, Bigfoot Unleashed. But the main thing I wanted to basically get across tonight is to be careful. This is more like a public safety message, I think, that I do every single year at this time of year, to all of you guys out there that would be cryptozoologists, that are maybe just berry pickers, maybe you're mushroom hunters, maybe you just like being in the wilderness. Be aware. Be very, very aware. And be aware that not only are there 1,600 missing person cases all through the national park system of North America, of which there has not been a single trace. But I wanted to show you guys something here. And so I'm going to show another sequence of my film. And this is something that is uncanny, right? Once is chance, twice coincidence, 3 times is a pattern, and a pattern always denotes intelligence, and intelligence has to be investigated. And I say that because of the maps that I'm getting ready to show you guys here. So let me pull this back up. There we go. And here you go, guys. Hang on just a minute for me. $1,600. Hi guys, this is Jack at the Paranormal Intelligence Agency. Today I want to explore a really disturbing mystery, and that is the missing 411 disappearances of people in our national park system. A researcher named David Paulides, as many will know, discovered that there were unexplained disappearances occurring in our national park system. By some estimates, upwards of 1,600. They all seem to fit the same profile. And I will present in this film evidence that one of the primary suspects, which is Sasquatch or Bigfoot, may in fact be responsible for many of these disappearances. Recently, I was reviewing some of David Paulides' videos on the missing 411 cases, and I watched one of his episodes about berry pickers going missing. This caught my attention because one of the two cases he presents was a boy within earshot of his parents who heard him scream halfway, and then it sounded to them like the scream got muffled. David offered up the theory in his video that perhaps the child was either purposely muffled by a hand or perhaps fell through a doorway of some kind, perhaps into another dimension. This caught my attention because it is one of the only cases where the victim was in earshot at the time of their disappearance and a scream was heard out of them, which was muffled. I believe the highest probability for that is that a hand went over his mouth. And the primary suspect in the forest that has hands would be Sasquatch. What you're seeing are maps of the clusters of missing 411 cases on the top map, and the bottom map shows the cave systems of North America. When examined closely, one can see that they are a spot-on match. Many Native American tales have instances, have oral traditions about these creatures living underground and in cave systems. It is interesting to note that, as you can see, all of these are reported Sasquatch encounters. They match both the missing 411 cluster and the cave system map. It is far too much of a coincidence for there not to be a connection of some kind. One of the major cluster areas is in Yosemite National Park, and a famous Bigfoot video analyst named Thinker Thunker, as he goes by on his YouTube channel, did an extensive analysis of 4 Sasquatch, which were captured on the national park camera system overlooking one of the geysers. And here is his analysis.
Let me just zoom in. We see, let's see, 1, 2, 3. We've got 4 Bigfoots on screen at the same time hunting them. It's a world record. So thank you guys for watching, and just kidding, stick around and we will take a closer look. Right there. He's back here just behind these trees, and I just simply took a copy of him, put him up here for scale. And we can see that, remember, bison are measured at their shoulders, 5 to 6.6 feet at their shoulders, I believe, which means the hump is even taller. So just suffice it to say, that's one really big guy. And something completely bizarre about him is he has non-human body ratios. And you can easily tell that by looking at his arm, which is almost as long as his leg. Whereas your arms are 20% shorter than your legs, just like mine, just like every other human on the planet, male or female. We all have pretty much, plus or minus small degrees, the same body ratios. So that makes this guy one of, if not the rarest human on the planet. And again, keep in mind, he's really much bigger than this because he came from way back over there. Let's see, I can only guess, but that's maybe back to the river, across the bridge, and back this way, 50, 75 yards, who knows? Maybe somebody familiar with this area could verify that for us. But the further away you are, the smaller you appear. So this guy is taller. How much? We can only guess. But what if he were, say, that much taller? You know, it's at least possible. And that would make him not only extremely rare, but incredibly big. And there's something else about him. Well, for one, he's either incredibly brave, incredibly hungry, or incredibly stupid, because these bison could get back to him in, I'm guessing, about 4 to 6 seconds. And at that point, he would truly be in a world of hurt. Okay, now I'm going to just scrub through and try to find where we get our first glimpse at our two-legged friends up there. And I'm seeing something right there. And, you know, I can't tell if that's vapor tricking my eye or what. So we'll just keep moving. And Buffalo 3 there has got to stop and do his little buffalo business. But when you got to go, you know. And right there, I do see something. So keep your eyes peeled for right up here, and we'll see all 4 single file. And I'm just scrubbing back and forth. See them sneaking through up there, coming up downwind. Sneaky little trick.
I think first and foremost, we have to concede that we're dealing with gigantic.
Here, and we're going to see something pretty amazing. Now, for one, we see a little camera pan. I don't know if you've ever gone out and played with these webcams like this, but oftentimes you'll find where you can pan them left and right a little bit or switch to different camera views. But what's important here, watch Buffalo 4. He's right here by this little, he or she's right here by this little tree. And then we see the camera move right there, and the buffalo are in the same position. So there hasn't been a shift in time, only a little camera pan. And that is important because watch our 4 two-legged friends way back here. They're going to travel 100 yards or better within seconds. So here we go. I'm going to just start scrubbing slowly forward. And now the buffalo are pretty much moving the entire time. It's not like there's a lot for them to stop and graze on. And boom, already the 4 made it to right here. And I'll scrub back and forth. See where they are now? Now think about that. Could you and your friends put on some monkey suits and risk freezing cold temperatures and scalding hot water from geysers and being trampled to death by wild buffalo? Could you run? Could you sprint that entire distance in a matter of seconds? I would like to see that, because they did this. Whoever these 4 are, they did it without ever once alerting the buffalo. We never see the buffalo stop and look back in that direction. They just keep moving through, and these guys are in full out stealth mode. Okay, so here I've zoomed in, and we can see the 4 walking. We can see them through the trees and through the steam. Now, if you believe this is CGI, then I'm not trying to be mean, but boy, you do not have the slightest inkling of what CGI is or how it works. CGI at that point is just some sort of magic to you, and you use it to explain away everything. But I can tell you that there is no way. I mean, you would have to take a live shot and then cut out these trees and the steam and mask out every little bit of in between the pine needles and all that. We're talking hundreds and hundreds of man hours just to superimpose in these animated characters or whatever you think they are. And I'm telling you, no, it is not CGI. And if you believe it is, then prove it. Show us Show us some examples. Anyway, moving on. I've got something really amazing I want to show you. So here's the first guy walking through, and the second, and I say guy, I don't know what they are. And now look at the fourth. It is what? Heads taller than the other three. And the first guy we saw when I had him beside the buffalo, he was 7 foot or better. So if this guy is now heads taller than somebody who's 7 foot tall, that means that we have one of the world's tallest human beings out here on this hoax, if you need to believe it's a hoax. Okay, so now I'm going to let this just run through real time, let it loop a time or two. And there's Pee-wee, the first guy we saw, the 7-footer, and he's walking on out by himself, all the others stay in hiding. And watching through this time, we'll see his left foot or left leg's hurting a bit. He's hobbled a bit there. But don't you wish you could run superhuman speeds with a hurt foot or leg? Or hey, maybe while running, say, 20 or 30 miles an hour through the forest and snow, maybe he pulled a hamstring or something. Who knows? And then the whole shot ends when the camera pans off to the guys are going off.
Now we're going to look at
All right, guys. So anyway, you get a very, very good indication of what you're dealing with out there in the wild. Creatures that big, that can move that stealthily, that are well aware of where wild berries and mushrooms are growing at the time when they grow during the spring. So, be careful. That's the main takeaway from tonight's show. So, anyway, I will be back next week. And next week, got something really, really special for you guys. So, it's referred to as the Devil's Academy, which is such a woo name, right? But the truth is in 1979 in a aerospace academy in Miami, what has been described as the most profound paranormal event in American history occurred. And it may, in fact, have a direct relationship to the hitchhiker effect. And might give us another glimpse into that mystery. So that's all I have for you tonight, guys. Thanks for being with me. I will be back next Thursday night, same time, same place, and I hope to see you there. Thanks, everybody.